Hello there. You may have noticed over the last few years that there have been quite a lot of comic book movies being released. Now, I tend not to review these films, not because I don't enjoy them, but because there are plenty of other people doing that, and I'd rather speak about media that people aren't talking about as much. Having said that, I've decided to look at some comic book movies, but ones that don't feature superheroes and ones that nobody else is talking about. I have already done this once, inadvertently, with my review of Danger, Diabolic, based on an Italian comic character who is definitely not a superhero. The first film in this series I'll be looking at is 2001's Ghost World, based on a serialised graphic novel by Daniel Clowes. The original series ran from 1993 as part of Clowes' comic 8 Ball before being compiled into a graphic novel in 1997. It was a commercial and critical success, and as a result a film adaptation eventually came in 2001. Set in a nameless suburban American town, the comic sees Enid Coleslaw and Rebecca Doppelmayr, two teen girls, just graduated, wander around the town, criticising basically everything and wondering what next for them as they haunt this homogenised ghost world they inhabit. It's a bittersweet exploration of that time after school, but before a career, that focuses on the death of adolescence. The film, directed by Terry Zwigoff and written by Zwigoff and Clowes, continues the themes of the comic and some of the plot lines of it too, but crafts a more structured narrative.
It's that comedian I was telling you about.
I still live with my mother. People think I'm
worst.
peculiar.
See? It's barely even a joke.
It sees Enid, played by Thora Birch, and Rebecca, or Becky, played by Scarlett Johansson, prank call a lonely man named Seymour, played by Steve Buscemi.
Hi, it's me. Your striking blonde. Of course I remember you. Let's get together for lunch sometime. How about Friday at 1 o'clock?
Causing Enid to feel sympathy for him and striking up an unlikely friendship.
It took me a while before I got a chance to actually play it, but once I heard that song, it was like...
You liked it, huh? Yeah. There's some really rare performances.
While Becky settles into the sort of normalcy the pair once mocked.
One decaf mocha?
Decaf mocha.
Can I get you?
No, I do not want a biscotti with that.
God.
It really captures the spirit of the comic without directly translating it, with the characters looking like they've left up the page and the oversaturated colours giving it a washed out flatness of a comic book. On its surface, it's a snarky, edgy comedy about two teen girls sick of consumerism, mainstream culture and trendiness, and making fun of it all, sarcasm being their sharpest weapon.
Oh my god. You guys, I can't believe we made it.
Yeah. You graduated high school. How totally amazing.
Seemingly unable to extract joy from any aspect of their lives, they attempt to make everyone in their orbit miserable too. Their biggest target being nebbish loser Seymour, a stranger they find via a personal ad, pranking him by setting him up for a date with a woman who will never arrive, and while some enjoy this aspect of the film purely on its service level, as an acerbic comedy that scathingly takes down its targets, whether that be corporate homogeny.
Aren't there like a million places like this?
Oh, this is the ultimate. It's like the Taj Mahal of fake 50s diners.
Jocks and beauty queens.
Look at this. Is Stacy Himmler going out with Rod Auerbach?
Oh, God, how perfect.
Service culture.
Yeah, let me have lots of butter on it.
There you go, smothered in delicious yellow chemical sludge.
And modern art.
What can you tell us about your piece, Philip?
It's a really great video game about a guy who kills people with a big hammer.
Oh, I thought maybe this was supposed to be your father.
all of which it does brilliantly, it is actually much more than that, and doesn't shy away from showing our protagonists aren't heroes by any stretch.
If this guy freaks out, will you protect us?
This guy has every reason to freak out. I mean, think about it, this is a pretty fucked up thing to do to somebody.
They seek out the people who don't fit in, the outcasts like them, in their town. Not to connect with them or to discover more about themselves, but to mock them as they do with everything.
Hi. Check out these people behind you. I'm totally convinced they're Satanists.
They are targets, just like all of the aspects of their town they rail against. And this behaviour, as well as their often pseudo-intellectual superiority, is called out by their reluctant friend Josh, played by the late Brad Renfro, who doesn't say much, but often what he does say exposes that this superiority is perhaps misplaced.
Oh my god. He just ordered a giant glass of milk.
That's a vanilla milkshake.
This perfectly exemplifies the subtle dichotomy at work in making you like the lead characters and yet not glorifying them. This tone is established from the very beginning, as the camera pans past apartments with a variety of inhabitants leaving seemingly mundane lives, intercut and accompanied by a vibrant music video of a 60s Indian pop song from the film Gumnam, which we discover Enid is watching and dancing to the night before her graduation. The other residents in this apartment block being the kind of people she mocks relentlessly, and yet her living situation is no different. And while she gleefully and unironically dances around her room to something she genuinely derives joy from, there's no way she would do this if it was in view of anybody else. This is demonstrated in the next few scenes where we meet her best friend Becky at their graduation, and they both relentlessly make fun of everything associated with this traditional rite of passage.
Wow, this is so bad, it's almost good.
This is so bad it's gone past good and back to bad again.
We also see the first tiny hairline crack in their relationship here as Becky is approached by a boy, a seemingly regular occurrence, and Enid laments losing the things and people she genuinely enjoyed.
Hey, Rebecca.
Oh, hi.
So, we finally,
What about me? Am I not even here? God, just think we'll never see Dennis again.
Good.
It's actually totally depressing.
They may well have been simpatico in school, where they found a connection in both being outcasts, but now, about to be cast out into the real world, Becky begins to embrace traditional adulthood and Enid begins to lose her veneer of cynicism. These themes are reinforced throughout the film and work as the central conflict between these characters. At first they carry on as normal, but devoid from the unexpected comfort of school, where they were the outcasts who gravitated towards each other, this friendship no longer has that. When placed in the wider world, where the cliques and popularity contests no longer exist, or at least have changed, it represents the uneasy shift from childhood to adulthood that is particularly heightened for anyone who felt they didn't quite fit in at school and didn't learn the social norms of group dynamics. As the film goes on, the story becomes more and more about Enid, but still refrains from painting her as the hero. Becky goes off to work in a soulless coffee chain, while Enid listlessly bounces between the art summer school she needs to take in order to graduate, jobs she is unable to contain her contempt for, and a burgeoning friendship with the guy she pranked, Seymour, who she empathises with when she sees the effect of her prank.
You are like the luckiest guy in the world. I would kill to have stuff like this.
Please, go ahead and kill me.
She is seemingly constantly drawn to the things she professes to hate. She hates the pretentious art class, but is championed by the pretentious art teacher and enjoys it. She hates the corporate chain stores springing up all over town and yet frequents them. She hates the creeps in the adult bookstore but is desperate to visit it. She thinks Seymour is a pathetic loser but becomes enamoured by him.
Seymour's birthday tonight. Oh shit, what time is it? I'm supposed to go to the store. I was gonna make him a cake.
He is a passionate blues enthusiast who works for a fast food chicken chain with a deeply racist origin. He is disconnected from the rest of humanity and longs for a past that he knows never really existed, creating his own nostalgia bubble.
I suppose things are better now, but I don't know, it's complicated. People still hate each other, but they just know how to hide it better or something.
This perfectly exemplifies the cultural shift of the turn of a millennium that we are still struggling to deal with the effects of today. Racism had become completely socially unacceptable, while, as we see in the film, homophobia and sexism hadn't. And yet, as Seymour points out, racists hadn't gone anywhere, so what does that mean for society? At the time this was made, no one knew the answer, but as we now know, it, like other socially unacceptable bigotries, goes dormant, reactivating whenever someone is able to weaponize it. Ultimately, Enid's internal conflict is shown to be not just self-destructive, but destructive to the people around her. And while Becky seems to be the one who has given up on their self-imposed outcast status, she's actually the pragmatic one. She is able to retain her snarkiness while accepting that she has to make concessions in order to transition into the next stage of life. Enid's refusal to compromise who she is means she's unable to work on the flaws in her character, because she doesn't see them until it's far too late. She thinks she's found a kindred spirit in Buscemi Seymour, who seems unapologetic about his interests, but is actually deeply miserable as a result of his life choices, and when he tries to improve his situation, Enid is the one who torpedoes it.
Don't you like me?
At first glance, it looks like this selfish move simply proves that misery loves company. But while she is certainly jealous that Seymour is able to grow while she can't, it's more that she is at her lowest ebb at this point and is desperate to feel something positive. And thanks to a brilliant performance from Thora Birch, I think she remains sympathetic. While it seems like she might hate seeing anyone else happy, what she really hates is seeing herself as miserable as she is, and the film allows you to discover that about her. It's this complexity that makes the film seem all the more real, which contrasts with the ever so slightly unreal world it's set in. The colours are oversaturated, the streets are sparsely populated, the characters we do meet are generally over the top, and yet it still feels real. It's funny, sad, touching, and frustrating, and in some ways is years ahead of its time, as it mocks consumerism, hipsters, popular culture, uniformity, and normalcy, but also holds a mirror up to that mockery, suggesting that it's not enough to just mock the status quo, especially if that mockery is actually a mask for your own repressed insecurities. When I first saw this film, I was around 18, the age of Enid and Becky in the film, and it definitely spoke to me in a different way than it does now. I loved the weirdness, the snarkiness, the deep, dark sarcasm of the two leads, because I was as cynical as they were, maybe more so. And I probably followed Enid its path more at the time, not really aware of the more complex issues the movie was tackling. And that's fine. But if that was still all I got for the film, at the age I am now, I would probably be more like Seymour today.
Well, you think it's healthy to obsessively collect things?
Watching it at different stages of your life hits you very differently though, and it's a real lesson in how being too fixed in one's mindset is ultimately self-destructive. My biggest takeaway is that there is nothing wrong with expressing joy for the things that in life that bring you joy. Cynicism can be useful, but don't make it your entire personality. Before I get into spoilers about the end of the film, I want to take some time to mention the cast, who I think do a tremendous job. Thora Birch is truly incredible as Enid. Birch started as a child actor, getting her breakthrough in Hocus Pocus, and building a strong early career from there before her standout performance in American Beauty. And while Dungeons and Dragons might have been a big-budget misstep, her role in Ghost World really cemented her as an extraordinary talent. Carrying such an unusual film with its unnatural dialogue in an emotionally challenging role could have been laughable, but the honesty and vulnerability Birch brings to the role is really standout, especially as she was only 18 at the time. After Ghost World, her acting appearances became more infrequent, as she turned down many of the roles offered to her, and it's a real shame that the projects available to her weren't to her liking, as she really shines in this film. Becky is played by Scarlett Johansson, just a few years before her career-altering performance in Lost in Translation, and it's pretty clear she was destined for fame. She has less screen time and less of an emotional arc as Enid, but her ability to play the role and not come off as overly antagonistic when her friendship with Enid breaks down is really impressive. The friendship between Becky and Enid is so central to the character's success, and it's a testament to both their talents that they make it work so well. Steve Buscemi as Seymour is as reliable as Buscemi is in all his roles, further proving his versatility. Seymour could easily have come across as a scumbag or pervert, but Buscemi plays him sympathetically enough that this is never a concern. Illeana Douglas as art teacher Roberta is also brilliant, starting off as this stereotype of modern art enthusiasts and a seeming antagonist for Enid, only to become her champion in a completely believable way. Her appearances are brief but so important to show Enid's evolution and self-destructive tendencies. Brad Renfro as Josh is another small but important role that Renfro excels in, as he often represents the voice of reason in the weird world the characters inhabit. It was a really tragic loss that he died so young. The supporting cast of strange, idiosyncratic and often outlandish characters are all fantastic in what could easily be over-the-top and distracting roles, like Dave Sheridan as Doug,
Josh, hey, give me 2 packs of cigarettes today. Working overtime.
Charles C. Stevenson as Norman,
Hi, what's your name?
Norman.
Are you waiting for a bus?
Yes.
and the great Bob Balaban as Enid's dad.
Hey, honey, would you come in here for a minute? Sweetie, you remember Maxine?
I'm going to get into spoilers for the ending now, so if you haven't seen the film, please do seek it out, as it is hilarious, touching, sad, satirical and poignant. So, throughout the film we see an old man sitting at a bus stop. At one point Enid approaches him and finds out his name is Norman, and he's waiting for a bus that will never come, as she informs him that the bus stop is no longer in service. Then, at the end of the film, we see the bus he's waiting for arrive, and he gets on it, prompting her to gather some personal items and wait for the next bus at this apparently defunct stop. The movie ends with her getting on the bus and taking it out of town. It's easy to see why this ending has been interpreted as Enid committing suicide. If Norman represents an old man waiting for death, which comes in the form of this bus that shouldn't exist, then Enid taking that bus represents her prematurely ending her life. This seems to be reinforced with her reaction to Norman being picked up / dying, acting as her inspiration. Her comment about killing herself if her father gets back with his ex, which he does, and her red dress being a very common symbolic colour for death in film.
We wanted to punctuate certain parts of the movie, so when you did see it again, that you would notice that there were little clues along the way, and one of them was with the color red.
And while this is a valid interpretation, I tend to agree with the writers who say it was never their intention, and that she is simply getting out of town, even if it is in a way that is somewhat supernatural. The reason I believe this is the case goes back to that opening scene. When she is alone in her room, she is able to express her joy in something that brings her pleasure. Unable to find anything in her town that allows her to express her joy in the same way, despite going on a journey to find it, and being prevented from getting out of town via a normal route, being unable to attend college due to her disastrous summer school, and after attempting to find joy through orthodox means with either a partner or a job or a new apartment with her friend, she finds an unorthodox way of escaping her ghost world, for one that she can find her joy in elsewhere. Maybe that's my own unbridled optimism that everyone deserves to find their own happiness, but I also enjoy the ambiguousness of it all, that allows you to decide whether Enid discovers her happiness or not. Thank you. Goodbye.